Kia ora. Welcome. This is MOG, and I have come across this interesting book for my fellow Maori, Kiwis, New Zealanders who are interested in te reo, the history of the Maori, etc. You will enjoy this book. It is called Te Tohunga by W.Dittmer. Not too sure when it was written. It says a memorial to the Right Honourable R.J. Seddon, PC, Premier of New Zealand, 1893-1906. I think maybe the high school at Western Springs, Auckland, Seddon Technical Memorial. Or Seddon High School was built in honour of him. Te Tohunga. Hupene, the old Tohunga. Te Tohunga, the ancient legends and traditions of the Maori. Orally collected and pictured by W.Dittmer. Maybe in the 1900s it was published. No I waka awa te kakahu e tane ko taku. You wove the garment, I have put the border to it. A Maori proverb. To the Countess of Ranfurly, who was a true friend to artists and the art in New Zealand. This book is dedicated by the author. List of contents. Quite exclusive there. List of full page illustrations. There's a glossary. Pronunciation of the vowels in Maori are A has the sound of A in rather. E as in dedication, so it will be E. I is E as in sheep. O is O as in bold, so it will be O. And U as U in cook, so it will be A, E, O, U. And here's the names in the language. Te reo, te reo. Preface. With the drawings it began. An expired world tried to come to life again in the fragments which some old Maori narrated. Nature all around favoured admiration only, and her loneliness was alive with longing. Of Maori art I have never heard, and when that art was first offered me, I had none other to choose. At first it disgusted me, but I had to make use of my time. The evergreen nature was beautiful and entrancing, was her invitation to waste my life in her midst, as she herself was wasting away. To protect myself against her allurements, I began the first sketches of old carvings, then I made more. Sitting beside me and looking at my work, an old Maori related the deeds of his ancestor, upon whose carved image I was at work, and they were mighty deeds. In evenings, later, at the campfire, those deeds lived again in my thoughts, and the imagination busied herself awkwardly enough to express new ideas with the help of new forms. That was the beginning of the first drawing. Out of books I could learn the old legends, but from the fragmentary narratives of my old friends they sprang into life, so the number of drawings grew aimless, purposeless. By that which first had disgusted me I was now greatly attracted. The forest was dreaming while I worked, the river murmured, and the strange people awoke interest and friendship. Then one day came a traveller from Europe. He saw the drawings and spoke the words, "Make a book," and the magic words, "I'll get it published." Then he went his way back to Europe again. It was 4 years ago. Because these words were spoken in a faraway country, this book came to life. Otherwise, the destiny of those first few drawings would doubtless have been the destiny of everything else in the great nature, to wither, to fall, to dust. Perhaps it would have been a pity. As to the text of the book, 'twere better that another had written it. More serious treatises have been published by those with greater opportunities to hear and more art to reproduce the legends from the mouths of the old folk now dead and gone, and I owe a great deal to them, especially to Sir Governor George Grey, or he was the Governor George Grey, Polynesian mythology, and Reverend R. Taylor's Te Ika a Maui, as well as to Mr. John White, Mr. E. Skirren, and Hamilton's Maori art. But it was to my old friends that I chiefly listened, seeking to look into the past through their eyes, to stir my imagination through their memories. Yet even though my pencil may not have done its work amiss, I have grave doubts of the works of my pen. A part only of the legends is contained in this book. It will suffice to keep alive what I have received from my tattooed friends during the long, long days of a peculiar, strange life. The little that is new in my book does not pretend to be scientific. I have written it to help my drawings along their way. And after all, the book will possibly never have been completed without the friends which the drawings made in New Zealand. Above all, Augustus Hamilton, director of the Colonial Museum, the encouragement and help I received from him, the benefit of his wide knowledge and love of art and of all things Maori, and his true friendship gave confidence to my wavering hopes of representing graphically the imaginings of a people so alien to and so distant from the European mind. At last, everything was done. The parting hour came from the new home back to the old, and now my thoughts are wandering back, often and often, to that distant time when everything was at its beginning, when the tent was pitched under the willow on the river, and from the Maori village on the other shores issued the sounds of happy life, when morning after morning the sun rose golden over the hills, and every night the river reflected the silvery stars, when the willow grew slowly yellow and the falling leaves gilded the tent, when the smoke of the campfire rose blue into the skies, and the first drawing was finished. W.Dittmer, London, 1907. Introduction. Maori mask and godstick. A small fire had been kindled, and over it hummed the billy, boiling for the last time in Maori land. Through the misty atmosphere the sun was sinking, powerless and glowing red, and night came, a grand night. Beautifully illuminated, grand clouds of smoke ascended from the burning primeval forest, a first mighty sign of the work of man and the will of man, for the fire has to finish the work of the axe and to consume the forest. Stars in silvery brilliance bespatter the east, the west is all aglow with crimson gold and creamy white, but tomorrow work and care will follow the great destruction, for endless is the beauty of this evergreen country, but its liberty and its fruitfulness are labour. He who wishes for liberty must till the soil, and the fruit of liberty shall be art, for art is not an image, but a fruit. A strange fruit is once gathered by the Maori children of nature, a fruit grown out of the darkness of the ocean, encircled forests, and art, hopeless and sad, a fruit without seed. Was not darkness the mother of all? Does not the everlasting ocean encircle all? And in the end, must not the darkness again swallow all? This art followed the ways of untiring nature, unseemly tools, unmeasured time, and endless labour, shaped to perfection, the hardest stone into the Meriponamu, the beautifully formed and polished greenstone weapon, the giant of the forest, into the wonderful war canoe. Sharp-edged stones and shells have to shape the tree into the centre post of the house, into the mighty figure of the god and ancestor, and such labour stands in grim need of incantations to the Atuas, gods who dwell in the darknesses of the lower world, and who dwell in the space of light above the earth, that they may strengthen and leaven the unseeming tools with their god power. The sages and dreamers of many generations had spent their lives bending over the smoke of their little fires and forming into wisdom what their eyes perceived of the wonders of the world, and their wisdom has resulted in incantations and karakias powerful enough to overcome the gods. These incantations and karakias are tapu. This is like prayers, okay. And tapu is like sacred. That is sacred. The possessor of them is a tohunga. A tohunga is sacred. The tapu of the tohunga is descended from the gods, and so is his wisdom. The gods are all descended from the great mother darkness, the goddess Hine Nui Te Po, and they are the ancestors of mankind, which with every generation moves farther and farther away from the gods. Once a great inspiration must have fallen upon the Maori world, but since then generation followed generation, framing incantations, speculating, shaping, never renewing, never widening this inspiration, but working out form and expression to perfection. The life of man became like the life of ever-renewing nature, producing and again destroying, giving birth and again killing, to enable life to be sustained. The souls of man grew into the rigid wisdom of incantations. The food of man became man. He who wishes for art must till the soil, but he who tills the soil must have faith, for art, though a fruit of nature, is a child of God. With the rising sun came the old friend, and placed fresh wood on the campfire, a work of love, for he is a rangatira Tohunga, chief priest of great mana in his tribe, and his tapu forbids menial labour. With sorrow in his face he sat down quietly, laying a parting present at our feet. On the water of the river sways the reflected canoe, loaded for the journey, and the sun plays among the leaves of the trees, the children of the god Tane Mahuta. Take with you the wisdom of the old people, my wanderer, the wisdom which will soon be forgotten among my children, who follow now the ways of the Pakeha, the new friends who came to us, bringing the truth of their God, and we are now all children of the great Queen over the seas, who promised to be our mother. Go in peace, my friend. Deeply thinking, he looked in the glowing embers. Each followed his own thoughts. Far away at Hawaii was the world created, and there is the home of the Maoris. It is the birthplace of their race. It was the dwelling place of their ancestors, who are gods now and live in the heavens. It is their spirit land. Their ancestors built the Wharikura, the sacred temple, at Hawaii, and it stood facing east at the place of Mua. In the Wharikura assembled the highest chiefs and the tohungas of all the tribes to communicate with the spirits of the gods, and to repeat and rehearse the names and heroic deeds of the ancestors, that they might take deep root in the hearts of the living, and that they might never forget their descent from the most ancient gods who dwelled in the darkness. And nothing in the beginning of all things. They assembled to acquire and repeat the sacred wisdom of the incantations, the ceremonies, and the traditions from Te Kore, the nothing, to Te Po, the lower world, to Te Ao, the light, to Rangi Nui, the great heaven, and to Papa Nui, the great earth, the incantations and karakias to the gods of war and of witchcraft, and the food, and all those to the multitude of spirits who govern, help, or hinder the living. From Hawaii, the heroes and their tribes wandered over the seas, and the Tohungas took with them the wisdom of the wharekura, guarding it sacredly and repeating it only to the ears of their descendants or to those of high rank and ambition, and nothing of the sacred knowledge was lost from the days of Te Kore to the present time, but now it is dying with the last Tohungas. Little only is known of the sacred wisdom of the Maoris. The dread of the old gods is still living in the hearts of the Maoris. It should actually be the Maori. There's no S on the end, even though there's more than one. But the last hour has come for them, as they now bend their tattooed heads over the fire and murmur regretfully of the great past. Thoughtfully looked the old friend at me, and I spoke. Farewell, friend. Wide you opened your heart, and far away will I take your love with me, far away into the great distance to my Hawaii, and always will I think of the Tohunga, of the Maoris, the rangatira, my friend. Small was my little knowledge, and bad were my tools to form it into pictures, and I was in need of the incantations to the atuas, who have the art in their keeping, the gods who have the happiness and hope, the comprehension and confidence in their keeping, in the whare puni of my friends, the Maoris. I found these atuas, and more a friendship, which made the loneliness fly away like a dark feather before the morning wind. Farewell. Haere he tama tapu. Farewell, my son. This song out of ancient time I give you, for your eyes can look back into the past, but my eyes are dim like my wisdom. Look often at the sign which I have put to it, that you may remember me. Farewell. Kia ora, kia ora. His song, Tiki, the ancestor of mankind. Maori Koriko, the first woman, and Tiki, her creator. Hupene, the old Tohunga, squats muttering on the floor beside his carved ancestor Tiki. Tiki is a god who in the dim long ago helped to build the world, and whose carved image is now supporting the middle pillar of the house. His eyes of Pawashel, which once commanded in the 10 heavens and were full of fire and wisdom, glisten out of the silent twilight. They stare far, far into the darkness, which Hine Nui Te Po is slowly spreading over the world. Hine Nui Te Po, the great mother of night, who at one time was young and beautiful and gave life to nature. Haere mai e te manuhere, haere mai. Welcome, stranger, welcome. So speak the old Tohunga. Then drawing his flax mat around him, he mutters haere mai. And after a long silence again, as if murmuring to himself, haere mai. But soon his eyes follow those of his ancestor. Again, gazing into the silence of the slowly descending night, the ancient goddess Hine Nui Te Po, the great mother of rest, wisdom dwells with the aged, and their muttering is a sign that their wisdom is ripe. Flying from the mouth of the old, it becomes mother now and wife to the listening ear. Listen, my guest, when man dies, he returns no more to the place which once knew him, unlike the daughter of heaven, Te Marama, the moon, which ever ascends to new life from the spring of living water. Man must die. He is devoured by Hine Nui Te Po, the great mother of nature, the first among the gods, and man is her food. Ha! Hear now the story of Tiki, our father, the father of man. When Rangi Nui, the great heaven, and Papa Tuanuku, the far-stretching earth, were separated from each other, then, my listener, the light shone over Papa Tuanuku, the mother of Tiki, and he was the first man. Ah! Great was his longing for the power to spread himself out over Papa, father of mankind. He wanted to be. Far and far and far he wandered over Hawaii, searching and asking, and again he wandered forth all over Hawaii, his heart full of longing. Ah, my listener, full of longing was his heart. At last he came to the river at Hawaii, known by the name of Wai Matuhirangi, and from the depth of his desire he cried aloud, O daughter of Hawaii, child of the memory water, tell me how I may become the father of mankind. Tell me where I may obtain the power and from whom. And the river, Wai Matuhirangi, answered him and said, Ha! Tiki, son of heaven and earth, go and search for the incantations and the powerful karakias, and to the gods who have the desires of man in their keeping. And when you have obtained them, return to me here, for it is here that the child of man shall be born out of the murmuring waters at Hawaii. Go and search. Oh, listen to Tiki, our father of man. Our father, the father of man. Ha! See how he set out on his search. First he journeyed to the gods of Tepo, the lower world, and then he made his toilsome way through the 10 heavens, searching for the sacred incantations and the karakias, the object of his mighty quest. And at last, high, high in the uppermost heaven, he found them. Ah, my listener. Joy made his journey light in the distance easy, and it was with a gladsome heart that he stood once more by the river in Hawaii and cried aloud, O daughter of the many faces, I bring with me the karakias to the powerful gods, the great incantations which will give power and ecstasy to Tiki. See, I bring the incantations for which I went in search. Then he knelt down, and as the gods had commanded him, mixed the sacred red colour with the soft sands of the shore, and formed a figure like unto himself, as he saw his own image reflected in the water. Full of joys, he shaped the body and the limbs, the head and the eyes, and then he commenced to chant the sacred incantation, the first lines of which are as follows. From the children of Hawaii, shake in ecstasies, O shake in ecstasies, O Tiki the father, Tiki the seeker, ha, shake in ecstasies. And so, with the help of the shimmering heat and the echo, the power of multiplying, he gave life to the first woman. Maori Koriko, or Twilight, was the first woman. Maori Koriko, my listener, was not a child of the gods. She was created out of the sands of the shore in the sacred red. She takes her descent from the shimmering heat and from the echo, and she became the first of Tiki, our father. Many children were born to Tiki and Maori Koriko, his wife. Their daughter was Hine Kau Ata Ata, the floating shadow. And the children of Hine Kau Ata Ata began their lives as clouds wandering across the sky. They were light and flew far away till lost to sight in the distance, or they were heavy and did not move and brooded overhead in rain. Then it was that Papa Tuanuku, the earth, lay under the spell of the first awakening day. Among the many children of Tiki and Maori Koriko were the sons the power of speech and the power of growth, who took their sisters to wife, and Te Io Whakatangata, he who became man, was born, and he was the father of many children, the Maori children of the world. This is the wisdom of Tiki, our father, and Maori Koriko, his wife, the parents of man, who peoples the earth. The wisdom of Tiki, our father. Welcome, my guest from the far distance. Welcome. You give pleasure to my eyes, and in your ears has sounded the wisdom of Tiki. Welcome, my friend, my guest. Welcome, welcome. Hine nui te pō. He swallowed the world again, and Rangi looks down upon Papa out of his eye of the night, the moon, and is slowly unfolding his beautiful garment, which is adorned with the stars, the eyes of the braves who fell in battle. Fiery looks Maru down upon the woman who kindled the cooking fire. Maru was the god of war in Hawaii, but he was an evil god, full of anger and wrath, and from him are descended illness and murder. He had many enemies, and at last they killed him and devoured him, but his spirit flew up to Rangi, there to become the fiery and flashing star. Rauriki, the oldest among the women who kindled the cooking fire, murmurs, for she is old, but she is a woman and murmurs no wisdom. She murmurs incantations to the fire that it might listen to Maui, who once brought the fire into the wood to be bright and warm and to cook the food for the hungry and for the guest. Silent and peaceful is the night. The great mother of nature swallows silently a few old songs, and the low-toned voices sound out of the huts in the whare puni. Ngā Wai, Roriki's granddaughter, now takes the embers to the whare puni and puts them to the feet of Tiki to warm and light the house, and outside night is working her grand and lonely wonders, while the old men, squatting around the fire and staring into the flames, narrate of the terrors of Hine Nui Te Po. Musing and wondering, thoughts light up the glow of the fire in the faces. Fire flashes out of the power shell eyes of the old ancestor, and patches of light flicker over the group that surrounds the fire, now lighting up the artistic lines of the tattoo in the faces. Now again the fantastic carvings on the walls, or suddenly brightening a painted ornament and covering the rest with impenetrable blackness. Every line the light reveals, every colour it displays, gives knowledge. Each carved image is a part of history of the people. It is the family history of the group around the fire, their history painted by the god of the fire upon the black garment of night, and with the fire it will die, swallowed by Hine Nui Te Po, and so in the end all will die, the words and the speaker and the listener. They will at last be devoured by Hine Nui Te Po, who has brought forth Rangi, and Papa, who has brought forth Tiki, who made Marikoriko his wife. Out of the womb of Hine Nui Te Po came the world, and to her all must go back as the fire to the ashes. 2. The creation of Hawaii. Here, friend, so speak Ngā Wai. Sit beside the old man of my people and listen to the song of the gods, which is living in the mouth of the blind Matapo, and know that truth is dwelling upon his lips. Listen to his words. Matapo, a blind Tohunga. Ah, these are my words to you, my wanderer, the words of the old Matapo, the oldest of his people, and his eyes are closed and they cannot see you, but they are opened again towards his heart. And what they see, your eyes cannot perceive, for upon those who dwell in the womb of night rest his eyes. Listen. The beginning was not too short, that is, it looks like a J, but I think it might be I-O, the great Atua, the God power, and the world was filled by Te Po Nui, the great darkness. Ah, Te Po Nui filled all the space, from the first space to the 100th to the 1000th space. Ha, my listener, then was it that the Atua commenced his great song of creation, and out of the darkness sprang forth life, and out of the darkness sprang forth Hine Nui Te Po, and out of the darkness sprang forth Te Ao, the light. Ha, my listener, Te Ao, ha, Te Ao gave birth to Rangi Nui, the great heaven, and again sang the Atua his great song of creation, and out of Te Po Nui sprang forth Tanga Roa, the god of the oceans, and out of Te Po Nui sprang forth Papa Tuanuku, the far-stretching earth. Ha! The earth was created, the earth and Rangi, the heaven. Ah, Rangi, the great heaven. Rangi took Hine Nui Te Po for his wife, and his son was Ha Nui or Rangi, the great breath of heaven. And Ha Nui or Rangi commenced his great movement, and forth sprang Tawhiri Matia, the father of the winds, and again Ha Nui o Rangi commenced his great movement, and Te Ata Tuhi sprang forth, the first glimmer of light. Te Ata Tuhi was a woman, and Rangi took her to wife. Her daughter was Te Marama, the moon, and Rangi spoke full of joy. Oh woman, Te Ata Tuhi, look upon the beauty of Rangi's daughter. Ha! She is his daughter, for which he was longing, and he made her his eye of night. Lightening his path, he went in search of his son. He found the woman, Te Wera, the heat, and his heart went out to her, so that he took her to wife, and Te Ra was born. Te Ra, the son. Then cried Rangi, full of joy, "Oh, woman, Wera, look upon the beauty of Rangi's son. Ha! He is his great son for which he was longing." And he made him his other eye, his eye of the day. Ha, my listener, great now was the Rangi's power, Rangi the creator. His eyes beheld with admiration Papa Tuanuku, the far-stretching earth, shine forth out of the darkness, and she was of great beauty. She was of great beauty, and Rangi made her his wife, that together they might create Hawaiki, and their first son was Rehua. With him were born the rays of light, and he flew high up into the highest heaven, which he made his dwelling place. He became the god of the highest mountain peak, and of the locks of heaven. The sun rays, when he stands highest on heaven, and he became the ancestor and the Ariki, lord of all the spirits and gods in the heavens. Then Tane was born, and he was the god power of the masculine sex and father of trees and birds. He and his brothers took Papa Tuanuku for their dwelling place. The next son of Rangi and Papa, listen my wanderer, was Tiki, a father who created Marikoriko, his wife, and became the father of man. Rangi and Papa, Rangi looked upon the far-stretching earth out of his eye of night, and he admired her beauty, and he looked upon her out of his eye of day, and his heart was full of joy, so that he spoke. "O woman, Papa, never more will I be parted from you. Together we will be the world, the parents, Rangi and Papa." Then their fourth son was born, Rongo. He was the god power of good, and the atua of the tapu and the sacred incantations. He was the creator of the food for man and the wisdom of cooking and the incantations over the food. Their fifth son was Tu, the atua of all evil and the god of war. As you have opened your eyes, Tane was the great the god of trees. As you have opened your eyes to the song of the old man, who is your friend, my listener, so open now your eyes, that they may show you how night presses upon earth, and darkness has swallowed all. For know, such was the night and the darkness which reigned between heaven and earth, everlasting from the first time to the 100th time, to the 1000th time. No, my friend, when the world was still dwelling in Te Po Nui, then was it Tangaro, the god of the oceans, who had taken Papa Tuanuku to wife, and his sons were Tiniro, the many hundreds, who founded the family of the waves which encircle the earth. When Tangaro had received Te Ata Tuhi, the first glimmer of light, he wandered forth to find the gate of day. Far he wandered, far into the last darknesses, and farther to the very end of Te Po Nui. But when he came back, then, my listener, then did he find Rangi, the Ariki, over Papa Tuanuku. The heaven was the Ariki over the earth. Full of rage, Tangaroa fell upon Rangi and wounded him terribly, so that he could not stand, and fell upon Papa, and never could lift himself any more. And no space and no light could come to his sons from this time. The sons, whose dwelling place was upon the earth, they had to live in darkness and night. But the sons, their hearts filled with the longing for the light, that happiness might grow again, and their hearts filled with the longing for space, that the power living in them might be born. The longing in the hearts of the children of Rangi and Papa became the mother of the great incantations, which gave them the power to create space again between heaven and earth, so that the light could come to them like a wife to all. And the voices of two spoke out of the darkness. Listen, all my brothers, together let us overcome Rangi, and let us kill him, for he gives us no room and covers us with blackness. Let us kill Rangi. But my listener, the voice of Tane spoke out of the darkness, and this is what he said. Listen, all my brothers, how can we kill Rangi? Is he not our father? Listen, all my brothers, and this is Tani's words. No, do not let us kill him, but let us search for the incantations to compel our brother Rehua and a host of spirits who dwell outside to help us in our great work, that we may lift our Father upon the highest mountains. Let us hold the karakia, that we may become sacred for our work to lift Rangi from Papa. Let Rangi be far from us, and let us dwell with Papa, our mother. Ha! These were the words of Tani. And all the voices out of the darkness spoke their consent, and all the voices together chanted the great incantations, Te Ruha, Te Ruha, to Rehua, and the host of gods and spirits, calling upon them to come to their aid. Then, my listener, they commenced the sacred karakia, which is held to become strong and unconquerable. Altogether they chanted this powerful song. The night, the day, the seeking, the edging out, from the seeking, the nothing. Their seeking thought also for their mother, that man might arise. Behold, this is the word, the largeness, the length, the height of their thought, to free their mother, that man might live. This was their counsel. Ha! Two now took the sharp-edged stone and cut the sinews in bands with which Rangi pressed the earth to his breast, and frightful were the cries of the heaven. Then calling out Rehua, the strength of the sons grew and grew and grew. My listener, all this strength, but where was the power that could separate the parents? Rangi the powerful could not be separated from Papa. Two could not find strength enough. And where was the strength of Rongo and the strength of Tiki? Then came Tane. Tane, open the eyes of your mind, as you have opened your ears and your eyes. Open the eyes of your mind, that they may perceive how Tane separated heaven and earth. See how he presses the head of his God power on the breasts of Papa. See his hair grow and take root. See how his body and his limbs begin to stretch. High above his feet grow into branches and bows. See how his power grows. Oh, how he grows, all powerful into the heaven. See how his power overcomes the strength of Rangi. He lifts him. He lifts the heavens higher. Heaven is high. Heaven and earth are separated. Hawaiki is born. Oh, Tane. My listener, Rangi and Papa are separated. From high above, Rangi sent down many words of farewell, so that they sounded all over the far-stretching earth, and many were his songs of love to Papa. His tears still fall upon Papa. They are the dew of the mornings, and Papa sang words of farewell, and her sighs flew up to Rangi as white cloud messengers of love. Great was the love of the parents, my listener. Great was the strength of the children. Your heir has received the wisdom of the creation of Hawaii, the home of my people, the Maori. The Poi dance. Tradition. Listen, who will deny the truth of the old gods? Who can deny the truth of the sun god, Maui? Everyone is asleep in the wharehungi, asleep too is Nākawai. Murmuringly had Matapo recited how the world was created. Deep into the night had he muttered the wisdom known only to himself and a few still living Tohungas, the wisdom of generations of gods and ancestors and heroes of Hawaii. Then he too had dropped off to sleep, and everything is loneliness and blackness for Hine Nui Te Po has finished a great repast and has devoured the world once more. Only the fire splutters now, and again flickering life, and answeringly a dim sparkle springs forth from the eyes of the old ancestor. The creation of the stars. Chant of Rangi Nui. Ngā wai a Maori chieftainess. Tane, the creation of nature. Tani in the trees, the fight of night and day, tradition. Maui, the creation of New Zealand. Tohunga, Te Ike a Maui, that's the fish of Maui. He put his hook in the water and put up this great fish, which was Aotearoa, New Zealand. Maui chanting incantations. Maui fishing New Zealand out of the ocean. Yeah, this Maui is a Hawaiian and Pacific legend, and also Aotearoa or New Zealand, an ancestor. Mahuika tradition. The gods and the heroes of the Maori people are personifications of nature and elemental powers. Through the forms and doings of these gods and heroes alone could they understand nature, night and light, cloud and lightning, sun and ocean. Taranga, the night sun, and Maui. Maui and Mahuika. Maui's fight with the sun. Tamanui ki te Ra. Ra is similar. The Maori word Ra, sun, is similar to was the same as the ancient Egyptian. Ra for sun. Gerald Massey in the 1800s wrote a book called The Book of Beginnings, Part 2, and in it he mentions that the Maori language is very close to the ancient Egyptian language. They have similar words, similar meanings. He claimed that it was one of the closest to the ancient Egyptian. We've already done a video on that. Hine nui te poor killing Maui. Te aroha, or the love of Hine Moa. Tanakai. Hine Moa. Maui and Ira Waru, a tradition. The Patu Pai A Rehe, the fairy people of the mountains. The Children of the Mist by James Cowan. The Maori and the fairy people. Tihi o Te Rangi. The path of the spirits, the mind of the young Maori runs far on battle and bloodshed, and but few bear the blood of the warriors in their veins. That blood which suddenly boils into powerful deeds. Few carry the blood of the rangatiras, who were masters over the bloodthirsty savages, or of the women who were slaves, but who were sometimes tohungas and powerful masters over the savage passions. Atangi, it's Maori language for a funeral. Battle of the Giants. The Giants. Coming on to Maori from Hawaii, possibly. Probably what it's referring to. Yep, definitely. Some very good artwork here. Tradition, Tama Te Kapua. The first offering to the gods. Atang. Maui. The burial of Te. Who? On Tongariro. I think my mother was of that tribe, that affiliation. I'm pretty sure she was. Tehu. I think that's how you say it. I always had a bit of difficulty with that one. Maybe somebody can put me right in the comments. My mother was actually a descendant of Mere Te Rikiriki, the great aunt of the, who she prophesied to be the Maori prophet, W.Dittmer. And can I say, unfortunately, we are related to Bishop Brian Tamaki. That's her cousin. Yes, she's told me a lot about him when he was young. Very interesting stories that she had. Unfortunately, Mere Te Rikiriki is not mentioned much in the histories. There's hardly anything out there about her. She gets very little acknowledgement for prophesying the coming of the Maori prophet. The founder of the Ratana Church, W.Dittmer. Okay. Very beautiful artwork there. Be grateful it's in colour, but it's an old book. It's very interesting. I hope you found it as a New Zealander, as a Kiwi, as a Maori, if you're looking at this, as a Maori, that you liked it. If you did, then subscribe to our channel. Make sure that the notification bell is set so you don't miss out on any of our interesting videos. And give us a thumbs up, bros, bro-esses. Yeah, and then tell all the whānau, all your family, friends, mates, all the bros, chirp about our YouTube channel and this video about this book, Te Tohunga, written by W.Dittmer, around about 1907, I think, something like that. Ka kite. Catch you later.